I'm proud to present Rayta van Rijswijk, who's not only an engineering manager at XPay Group, but is also a fierce advocate for diversity and inclusion on tech teams. She actively hires for diversity and isn't afraid to go down roads less traveled to do the right thing. Her story is super inspiring, and we all hope that the audience for this session will come away charged with energy to have the same kind of impact that she does in her business. Here's her story.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. Well, a couple of years ago, I did something really brave, or maybe some may say something really stupid. I made a career switch to work in tech and in an environment dominated by white men. So I gave up my safe space to work on something I had never done before, write code. I'm Rayta. I'm an engineering manager at a fintech company called XPay, where I build diverse and inclusive development teams in Amsterdam since September last year. So it's a super new challenge and experience for both the company and myself. So here's my story on how I got into tech and actually how I am building these teams. So my first computer was a second-hand Commodore 128. I was 12 years old at the time, and honestly, it wasn't my computer. My father bought it to write books, but he couldn't type. So my brother, who's 2 years younger than I am, and myself, we had to learn how to computer, so we know how to type large documents, right? Well, little did we know that programming was not needed to use just a simple text editor. So anyway, we learned basic programming at our community center. So armed with this new knowledge, we took over every computer we saw in every public place, like museum. And with our amazing hacker skills, we hacked into these computers, opening terminals, writing infinite loops with random texts like, "You have been hacked." So the excitement we felt, like no one ever suspected us because, well, we didn't look like the random hacker. Well, you know the type: dude, hoodie, pimples, lives on cola and pizza. I loved it. Like, I loved playing games on computers with my brother. I loved writing these tiny scripts that did absolutely no harm, but would freak out every non-techie person in that room. Yeah, I was a wild one. So after high school, I had to choose a field of study for my future career, and I was clueless. I didn't know what profession I would love as an adult, and now I was forced to make a decision for the rest of my life. I still liked computers a lot, but I also love taking care of animals. So I thought maybe computer science or medical school to become a vet. But then again, I had no role models to look up to either. So I entered this career orientation program for all the kids who had no clear direction about their career paths. And this was based on their education level. You just fill in some questions and you would get career advice. And based on my answers, my career advice was, true story, zookeeper. Zookeeper, yeah. So what happened to computer-related jobs? When I asked them about it, they actually advised against it. Are you sure? Because, well, all boys there, and you like fluffy animals, right? And also math, yeah, that's not your strongest subject on school, so it's going to be super hard, like super hard. Well, that's it. I felt disillusioned toward the result and decided to enroll into business school. So these are just examples of challenges I faced. Lack of role models, being actively discouraged to become an engineer, and feeling disillusioned. So I'm not here to complain or to raise sympathy. I mean, I've been treated well by people of all races and gender more often than I've not. But women of color experience more challenges than just the examples I just gave, especially when they work or want to work in software engineering. They struggle to fit in after realizing that they were a minority in the engineering workplace. Some feel isolation, others might experience bias, implicit bias even. So here are some interesting statistics. UNESCO published a report about girls and women's education in STEM. So UNESCO stands for United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization. And according to their groundbreaking report from 2017, only 35% of STEM students in higher education globally are women. 35%. And differences are observed within STEM disciplines. Of these 35%, only 3% of female students choose the higher education information and communication technologies, the ICT studies, basically. So this gender disparity is kind of alarming, especially as STEM careers are often referred to as job of the futures, driving innovation, social well-being, inclusive growth, and sustainable development. So STEM, that's science, technology, engineering, and math. And these statistics are real. I believe it threatens to rob the next generation of all the opportunities that all of us want for all our children, no matter what color or where they come from, right? And I think it also threatens to hold back businesses. D&I, diversity and inclusion, is critical to a company's success as the demographics of countries change. As people from different ethnicities and races move into the tech communities, they also expect to see a workforce that's reflective of its country residents. So fast forward, I'm in my mid-30s. I'm married, 2 kids, and I was founder of a travel agency specialized in winter sports. So we had our own website and a small external dev team who built and maintained the website. And every time when I wanted a small change implemented, it took days, sometimes even weeks. I grew impatient and I decided to learn code myself. I mean, like, how hard can it be, right? So I enrolled in this development bootcamp, this 7 days development bootcamp, and from that point on, I was hooked. I wanted to learn more, and I wanted to work in tech. So I started to work for this brand new coding academy that was still in its early startup phase, while I learned more about code. One of my tasks was to organize big coding events and monthly meetups, like the still ongoing Amsterdam Ruby meetup, which has grown to almost 2,000 members. And after that, I started working for a SaaS company where I had two mentors who taught me the basics of Ruby programming. I love Ruby. And I felt the need, and I felt I needed to learn more. So when my contract ended at the SaaS company, I enrolled at this very immersive, very intense training at a coding academy for 4 months. And thanks to my network, I landed my first job as a developer. I found out later, though, that I wasn't just hired for my coding skills, but also for my soft skills. So, because I had experience as an entrepreneur and organizer of events, and most importantly, apparently, the company loved my energy and people skills. So, that was a nice surprise. Sounds easy, right? Just go ahead, make this career switch and follow your dream. Well, it wasn't that easy. With 2 kids and a household to run on one income while I was studying required some intense planning. But I learned a lot as a developer. Like, I don't look like a developer. I look more like a beautician or marketing person, hairdresser even. Heard that one too. Also learned that a lot of men won't take me seriously at tech conferences. Oh, you're attending this talk. Well, it's very technical, you know. Or you're a developer, right? So what's your stack? And then they would test me on it, on my knowledge of this stack. So this one time, I was waiting to at the conference. I was waiting my turn at the booth, and I was browsing a bit the job openings that were pinned at the wall back at the booth. And this booth lady saw me, and she kindly informed me that they also have other jobs than just the technical ones pinned on the board. Yeah, I ran, obviously. And talking about communities, when I told people about this mini conference, I got questions, mostly from male engineers, about the goal of this summit and why it was necessary to have an event for women only. So, first of all, this is not an event for women only. It's a free event and everyone is welcome to attend. Still, the men were not convinced. We don't have a he sharp event either, right? Why would you need a she sharp event? Yeah. Well, I've heard this reasoning a lot. I'm also co-organizing the Rails Girls Netherlands events, for example, where we teach women and girls to code for free. And I heard a lot of muttering from men. Mumble, mumble. Why are you excluding us? Mumble, mumble. So here's the thing. Years ago, these communities, coding communities, also existed with mostly men. And when women attended these community events, they were excluded and they were laughed at. Worst case, these women were harassed and they felt not wanted, not taken seriously. So some of these women decided to create their own communities where women and girls would have a safe place to learn more about programming. And that was a huge success. And not just women and girls, but also other unrepresented groups within tech started to attend these events and create their own communities. And they were getting excited about programming, and these communities grew. So why don't we have these male tech events like He Sharp? Because all the tech events are already dominated by men. And these events are not about excluding people. It's about finding ways to be accepted and creating a safe environment where you can actually be yourself. It's about creating more diversity within communities in tech. So today, I'm an engineering manager at a fintech company. And one of my tasks is building and growing diverse and inclusive development teams. And with diversity, I don't mean white women. Diversity covers a broad spectrum. Diversity discussions have altered the topic by including gender and other issues as well. So the standard is white. A recruiter with a box ticking mindset can undermine this progress. Like, okay, people, we have a woman, we are diverse. Race is difficult to talk about. Race is one of those topics that makes people feel extremely uncomfortable. But I feel it's important enough to address when you're hiring for diversity. Companies these days want to be colorblind. Researchers have coined this term colorblindness to describe a learned behavior where we pretend that we don't notice race. And this concept informs commonly heard comments from woke companies or people. I don't see race, or race doesn't matter. We are all the same. We have the same color blood. Now, color blindness, in my view, doesn't mean there's no racial discrimination and that there's actual fairness. Like, not at all. It doesn't ensure it. So again, color blindness does not ensure that there is no racial discrimination. In my opinion, Colorblindness is actually very dangerous because it means we are ignoring the problem. All color blindness does is relieve companies from needing to actually address the discomfort and challenges related to racial difference, privilege, power, and disadvantage. Because if people really were equal and the same, then we all would have been treated the same. So, there was this corporate study that said that instead of avoiding race, the really smart organizations actually deal with it head on. They actually recognize that embracing diversity means recognizing all races, including the majority ones, of course. Don't ignore and dismiss people and their stories, but listen to them, observe. You might get new powerful insights. But this can be super hard and very uneasy and very uncomfortable. Now, I also think this is very important so that the next generation really understand that this progress will help them because they are also expecting us to be great role models, right? And the arguments in favor of diversity are very powerful and scientifically proven evil. For example, these obvious ones. Face recognition systems failed because the algorithm wasn't tested on Asian, African, or Native American peoples. Or, hey, fill in this form. What's your gender? Male? Female? Human? Unknown? Text entity? When your development team makes a mistake. There are also people with two letter names who will get an error when filling in their names on a form. But there is so much more than just two letter names. You can also, for a fun fact, you can search for falsehood programmers believe about names. You will find this entire list about how we believe names should look like. So you can search for in your favorite browser, of course, falsehood programmers believe about names. But diverse teams are not all rainbows and kittens. Companies with diverse and inclusive teams complain that they're not getting much return on their investment. They have all these diverse teams, but they're still not successful. So in order to get the benefits, employers must be prepared for and deal with some problems. Diversity does not produce better results automatically overnight through some sort of multicultural magic. It only works if it's managed well, which is actually no different than any other successful team. So there are a couple of challenges here, and I'll just touch on a few of them. So the first challenge would be the cultural difference. In some cultures, it's considered rude to speak up to your manager, and in many countries, especially women, are told to hold their tongues and defer to authority. Managers have to work harder to create an environment where members of silent minorities feel safe to speak up, or at least give them ways to contribute to the collective project. The second one is harder, but maybe even more important. It's about trust. It's crucial that the team trust each other, especially when they have to work together on demanding, strenuous projects. It's human nature to establish trust with people you have a lot in common with, right? So diverse teams have a higher degree of variance in their performance than homogeneous teams. They are more likely to produce truly innovative ideas, but they're also more likely to totally, completely fail. So managers of diverse teams need to work hard at establishing bonds of trust. Not just diverse teams, all teams, but especially diverse teams. They need to set lots of short-term goals so that teams can see the benefits of working together. They also need to recognize that different groups forge trust in different ways. So the Dutch, for instance, we have the most explicit or low context culture there is. And with low context, I mean our conversations assume relatively little intuitive understanding. So we can even be perceived as directive and rude. Japan and other East Asian countries represent the other extreme. But there are many more cultural challenges. And if you're interested, I'd recommend reading this book. It's Culture Map. Oh, can you see it? Yes. Culture Map by Erin Meyer, about different cultures, context on the work floor. So how do you hire for diversity? Companies that want to bring in more diverse employees need to look at their senior leadership and even the recruitment firms they use to help them with that. If the organizations don't understand the communities they're now trying to be part of, then diverse talent isn't understood. Companies need to make sure that this isn't done through panic token hiring. Education is needed for employers when it comes to understanding diversity. And hiring for diversity takes time. I've heard so many hiring managers complain. We really want to hire for diversity, but there's just not a lot of diverse people in there, especially engineering, and most of all, senior engineers. Diverse senior engineers, nowhere to be found. Well, they are here, but you might have to look beyond your current network. So on Twitter, for example, you can check out the hashtag Black Tech Twitter or the hashtag LGBTQ Tech. You can join meetups and you can attend their events, get to know the crowd, get to know the people. And you can also, as a company, sponsor tech meetups who stand for diversity and inclusion, or at least create a safe place for them to join. And check if they have a code of conduct. And there are quite a few out there. I will share them after my talk in this community Slack. It's quite a list. But here are some examples of safe communities. Big thank you to Floor Drace, who helped me with this list. So a couple of examples are PyLadies, Rails Girls, Django Girls, Code Curious, Queer.js, blackgirlscode.org, and so many more. And by sponsoring these events and these communities, you as a company are letting them know and their members know that you support their mission. Still, if you cannot find them, train them. Hire junior developers and train them into becoming the best possible developer they can ever be. The company I work for, XP, recently hired 4 Hack Your Future alumni. I love Hack Your Future. So to quote their tagline, Hack Your Future is a free 7-month web development program for talented refugees and other disadvantaged groups with limited access to education and the labor market. How awesome is that? And we have just started hiring. So here are some tips and some caveats if you're looking for a job in tech. Check out the company's about page. What does the team look like? Do they have a group picture of the teams? Does the company have a diversity and inclusion policy, code of conduct maybe? What are their core values? Can you resonate with them? Don't forget about your soft skills, right? If you're applying, show your personality in your motivation letter, also during the interview. Hiring managers these days don't just focus on tech skills, but they also check if you will fit their team as a person. And look out for red flags. Like, you don't want to be a token hire. Try to find out that the company who hires you is convinced that you are actually the best person for the job, not just because they want to not just because they want to tick some diversity boxes. Oh, woman, tick. Oh, black, tick. Yes, we got another one, people. No. And I know maybe some of you are already or have already been Googling or just search for the about the job page of the company I currently work for. It's in development as we speak. Will be deployed soon because, like I said, we just started in September. But we're on it. So how about all of you who are still considering if they want to go into tech and learn how to code, or maybe you're now just starting to learn how to code? How and where do you start and go further? So the coding bootcamps these days are dedicated to teach you as much about coding in very limited time, but some of them can be very expensive too. So you have Codesur, you have Le Wagon, and the Hack Your Future, my favorite. These coding schools provide scholarships, but you have to be resilient and you have to have time. Your life will exist of 7 days a week for 4 months or 7 months, depending on the academy, non-stop learning how to code. It's very immersive. So if a bootcamp is not for you, you can always learn programming yourself. There are great several tutorials online. However, I'd very much recommend to find a mentor or a coach. Where? Well, at meetups, for example, or maybe this community Slack. Perhaps the organizers can share a link in the chat for everyone who wants to join this Slack. And you'll find people there who are more than willing to help you or guide you or give you tips. And of course, we have conferences. So the best ones, personally, I find the best ones in real life because you can expand your network easier. You have real life talks. But on the other hand, these ones, the virtual ones, also offer a nice opportunity for networking. And lastly, if you still have the opportunity to choose your future field of study and you're thinking of STEM, then just go for it. Like, you can do it. We support you. We need you. So just if you were in doubt, it's like, this is a sign. Go for it. Do it. But there's no easy way to learn how to code. Learning how to code is learning how to grow outside your comfort zone. If you're still in doubt, if you're on the right track, feeling a bit of discomfort while learning how to code is part of the deal. Find a role model who inspires you, and they don't have to be a technical person per se. So for me, it was my mother. My mother was and still is a very independent woman. So back in the days, she was the first girl in college to wear trousers and the first woman in the family with a driver's license, and my grandparents' only daughter who went to the city to study children's psychology. So she is my motivator for sure. So how do I see the future? Well, I have 2 teenagers now, and I want them to look at the CTO or a vice president and say, I can be like her. I can be like Kamala Harris. Or they look like me. And I want them to know that anything is possible. So I tell them they can be whatever they want to be, and they can get whatever they want to get. But sometimes it takes time and you have to learn education. Sometimes you have to wait, opportunity. And sometimes you just have to be bold and ask. I was in my 30s when I made the career switch and learned programming. I'm 45 now and I'm building development teams. So you're never too old to learn new things. So in conclusion, what can you do to change the diversity system? Well, be curious. Look around you, observe your environment at work, at school, at home, your network, your inner circle, your friends. Be aware also how many look like you. And also to all you tech hiring managers who want more diversity in their teams, invite people in your professional life who don't look like you, who don't think like you, who don't act like you, and who don't come from where you come from. You might find that they will challenge your assumptions and actually make you grow as a person. You will learn more. You can start maybe by having coffee or lunch with that other team or that other person. You might get powerful new insights from these individuals. Ask questions, get out of your bubble. So it's a question for all of you. If you work in tech and you have a Twitter account, how many women, trans, non-binary folks in tech do you follow there? So seek role models, learn their stories. So you're always welcome to hit me up when you have questions regarding this topic, diversity, and maybe also about coding and coding bootcamps, or if you're interested in joining my company. You can find me on Twitter at Raytalks or in this community Slack. Thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you for your time. Back to you, Emily.
Thank you so much, Rayta. That was so cool. I think it's interesting to hear as well of the stories from your youth, and I mean, not saying that you're older, but like things have changed so much, but also not really. There's still a long way to go, which is, with you starting Rails Girls and so forth, we've come a long way, but there's still a lot ahead of us to do. I have a question about insisting on diversity and inclusion. Sometimes, naysayers, they say, oh, it should just be a meritocracy. Whoever's the most qualified should be the one who's hired. How do you navigate that nuance in diversity inclusion? Can you give an example of a time when you were faced with this issue, and how did you deal with it?
So like I also explained a bit, as in what I would do is not just look at the tech skills, but also look at the person. And I'm a real fan of you can train for skills, and you can hire for personality. So I look at the person and see if they fit the team, and if they're an asset to the team, we can just look further and see if we can train those tech skills. I mean, it's quote unquote simpler to train for tech skills, and maybe sometimes for this person it may take longer, but they can definitely be an asset to your team, because they bring so much more to the table than just this standard stack. So it depends what you find more important for your team, and also for your diversity and your for your diverse teams, basically.
Makes a lot of sense. I was also, when we were having a session before, we were practicing the session actually, so spoiler alert, I already know the ending, but you mentioned an example where you were hiring a consultancy, I believe, or basically an engineering team that you knew very well, but they were all white men, and I thought that was a really great story, if you wouldn't mind sharing that one.
Yeah. Well, it's not that like I said, I really want to have more. I want to have a diverse and an inclusive team, also because the product we sell, the target group, the user group, is not just white men. So I want to be. I want our development teams to be reflective of the user group as well, which is basically, because it's a fintech company. It's has to do with money. Everyone pays. So the target group is everyone. And to avoid any blunders that has been done previously by big tech companies, I gave a few examples in my talk without naming names, that can be really bad, like really, really bad. And you can prevent these bad testing decisions by just having a team who is diverse and who can just sort of make sure that the product fits everyone. Like also this really famous, I'm not sure if I can name names, this famous phone. They had like this health app, and they actually, it was all over the news. They forgot to take into account that women have monthly cycles. So that was an issue because the testers were mainly men, and they didn't think of this very important monthly cycle that women have. So they had to have this update, so this health app could be used by everyone.
Like, yeah, excluding 50% of the entire world's population is probably not
Yeah,
a great
painful.
decision, to say the least, especially in any business. There was a question in our chat. I noticed a number of diverse people being hired, but after that, it seems to stop. What's your view and experience on that happening?
And it seems to stop where?
I guess the diverse hiring practices seem to kind of stop and.
Oh, okay. I don't have that experience, but as a hiring manager, I would like. So, if diversity inclusion is not just a policy of your company, but also one of the core values, then it shouldn't stop. It should be part of your hiring system. So maybe the company, their leadership, maybe should reconsider their core values, and maybe think again of what they feel is important for the company. There are also companies who really value the environment and have core values that are like amazing for the environment, and take care of that. Other companies really value diversity and inclusion. So ideally, the hiring of diverse and diverse people shouldn't be an issue. And actually, it takes effort. It takes time, effort, and mostly time, and you have to work for it, because you have to look. They're just not like what the hiring manager said. I cannot find them. Well, they are there. You just have to put in some extra effort there.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. When we are talking about hiring for diversity, and also, of course, like we'll say improving the pipeline from which people come, and just getting more diverse people into tech, regardless of where they're coming from, and no matter how old they are, no matter how young they are, for example. That being said, what would you have told yourself if you could have, like your younger self?
Geez, if only I could. Yeah, I just would have. I was so discouraged. The thing is, I was only just a teenager, right? So very easily influenced, and there were these grown ups, and they knew better, so they advised against it, and no one actually told me go for it. So if there was just like this only this one person who just told me, just skip it, just do it, then maybe I would have reconsidered, and then maybe I would have like skipped the entire business school step and just, I don't know. It just, but no one told me. I was just actively discouraged by the teachers and the people, the advisors around me I had at the time. So there was not, and also there was like a very clear distinction between boys and girls. It was like, okay, of course you like animals. You're a girl, duh. And of course, boys like engineering. They're boys. And the distinction was so clear then. It was kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense, maybe even. So I was also brainwashed. But then again, to answer a question, if I could have been just like this voice, then I would have told myself, just don't listen to him, go for it.
And that being said, have you seen it change a lot? I mean, I'm presuming so, but what do you think is like the best way in which things have changed, and how can we also continue along that path? do you think?
How they have changed? Well, there's a lot going on in the world. So I was kind of a bit of anxious to talk about the race part, because people have opinions these days and they're not afraid to tell you. So that was kind of like, for me, sort of, I was a bit hesitant, like, should I talk about this, should I not? But diversity inclusion is also like, racism is kind of, well, not part of it, but it's a problem basically. So I do believe that things are changing. People talk more, and you can, well, I can see more differences between the extremists, and I also try, and that's what I tell people, try to get out of my bubble. So first, I was aware that I was in my bubble, like, everyone around me thinks like me. So how can everyone else who does not think like me even think like that? So I came, yeah, I stepped out of it, and I tried to listen to other people, and then I found out that, okay, let's forget the extremists. Let's forget them for a while, and let's just talk to the people who just really want to be educated, and they really have questions because they really don't know, and how does this work, and how can I help, and what can I do? So I think that's changing, and in a good way. For the extremists, I don't know. I have no words. I
Yeah.
ignore them.
I guess that's the only thing we can really do. I think that's the thing as well, as like a good note to end on is sort of, I think things are changing. They're changing so rapidly, I think, in some ways, which can sometimes make a lot of noise, especially from the loudest people in each crowd. It's not just the extremists who speak loudly, but,
Yeah.
also people within our own bubbles as well. But it's always that case where, yeah, the loudest people get heard first. You have to kind of dig a little bit to kind of make sure that it's not just noise, and that we're trying to do something collectively for the greater good. Cool.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. That was so cool. And indeed, I think it was great for you to bring up the race problem, because it is real. And I think especially in the Netherlands, for a long time, people were like, oh, we don't have that over here. It's an American thing. But we definitely do. I mean, we
Oh yeah.
exist.
Oh
um,
yeah, for sure.
and especially now with the whole thing that's going on in the government in the Netherlands, it's very clear that there's an issue. So hopefully this is like sort of the beginning of the end of that. It's going to be a long road, I feel, but thank you so much for your contribution and your impact, because it sounds like you're smashing it out of the park.
Oh, thank you for having me, Emily.